The Michigan Women's Hall of Fame in Lansing is currently honoring 6 women who displayed tremendous courage during the civil rights movement. Longtime Detroit activist, writer, and philosopher Grace Lee Boggs is one of the inductees. She's also the subject of a PBS documentary that airs on this station tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. It's called American Revolutionary: The Evolution of Grace Lee Boggs. Here's a sneak peek.
I feel so sorry for people who are not living in Detroit. People are always striving for size, to be a giant. And this is a symbol of how giants fall. Keep recognizing that reality is changing and that your ideas have to change. Don't get stuck in old ideas.
Grace has made more contributions to the Black struggle than most Black people have.
How did you become a philosopher?
I'll just go back 70 years. I'm not sure why I am who I am. I think it does have something to do with the fact that I was born female and born Chinese.
Folks didn't really think about Grace as a Chinese American. She was Grace, you know, she was just one of us.
I think the light bulb goes on very often in conversations that people have, and we don't pay attention to it.
Talk is cheap.
I find it very, very difficult to take. I want to tell you honestly, their talk was not cheap.
Oh, God, yeah, she made all kinds of people cry. Myself included.
Grace, how would you describe where we stand now?
One of the difficulties when you're coming out of oppression is that you get a concept of the Messiah. You have to get to that point that we are the leaders we've been looking for. We are the children of Martin and Malcolm. I don't know what the next American Revolution is going to be like, but you might be able to imagine it if your imagination were rich enough.
Last year, a charter school named after Grace and her late husband, James, opened on Detroit's East Side. Students at the Boggs School are taught to become critical thinkers who are committed to making Detroit a better place. 2 members of the school's board of directors are here today. Please welcome board president Dr. Loomis Elaire, who is director of the Gear Up program at the University of Michigan, and board member Alice Jennings, a civil rights lawyer and longtime friend of Grace and Jimmy Boggs. Thank you for joining us on American Black Journal. So this school sounds like a great place, and a place that is going to maybe produce the next Grace Lee Boggs, right? Is that the point?
That is the point of the school.
Yeah.
With the students, so first of all, I have to say that the students are beautiful. They are curious, imaginative, and they come to us that way at the school.
Yeah.
And so we really do believe in that the students who come to our school, we're building the leaders who can lead Detroit into the future that we all know Detroit can be.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about the students who come to us. They come from different parts of the city, and 50% of the students come from the neighborhood that we're in currently.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And the exact neighborhood is where?
On the east side of Detroit.
Yeah.
So near Gratiot and Mack.
Gratiot and Mack. Okay. Yep. A pretty hard hit part of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a pretty hard hit of the city. I'm assuming you're talking about in terms of economics.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I mean, it's a part of the city where someone like Grace Lee Boggs, that her work would have been centered. Right.
Right, and that's part of the reason for the location of the school.
Yeah.
When we looked at schools, we looked at the east side of Detroit. We initially looked at Island View Village, and we were doing work there,
yeah,
but we couldn't find a building. But we wanted to make sure we looked at a space where there wasn't many schools very close in the area doing some of the work that we were doing. So we were very intentional about being on the east side of Detroit and being in a community that didn't have as many resources as other places.
Yeah. Sure, sure. I think if you say the name Grace Lee Boggs around Detroit, most people, I think, have some idea of who you're talking about, but I often think that they don't really know what the work she did and continues to do means, and sort of, I think there's a lot of context missing from her.
Yes, Grace Lee Boggs, as well as her late husband, James Boggs, for Grace, she's been involved now for 60 years. Right. Tomorrow, she turns 99 years young. Is that right? Because she's still with us and still on the K's. So Grace has historically in Detroit meant a lot to the African American community and all people really. Starting in the 1950s, Grace was involved with some of the leading civil rights thinkers of our time, Reverend Clegg, Reverend Franklin. She was involved with the 1963 March down Woodward, where Martin Luther King gave the first
game.
First I Have a Dream speech. She was an organizer there. She is organized around education, violence with Save Our Sons and Daughters. She and Jimmy helped create Detroit Summer, which became similar to the civil rights movement, where we're now celebrating 50 years of Freedom Summer.
Freedom Summer, sure.
Well, we had Detroit Summer for many years, and that brought people in from young people in from all over the country.
Right.
Julia Putnam is the first person who signed up for Detroit Summer.
Is that right?
And she is now the principal of the school.
Oh, of the school.
Yes. So there's
wow.
a direct connection with the nurturement that occurred with Grace's leadership and Jimmy's leadership. And so many of the folks with the school have had connections.
You know, I wonder at the school, what kinds of things are you talking to the kids about that are civil rights issues today? I mean, it's very different now than it was 30 or 40 years ago, but of course there are still very big issues. What are the kind of things that that kids today might think of as civil rights challenges?
So I think one of the things to remember is that the school is K4 now.
Okay.
It'll be K5
so very little
next
kids.
year. So very little kids.
Right.
So talking about social justice and social rights issues may sound very different than it would sound with adults or even adolescents.
Sure.
I think one of the things I think about at the school at this level, we speak to kids about what it means to connect with one another.
Yeah.
So building community amongst the students. So I'm not necessarily speaking directly about social justice and social rights issues, more so introducing them to the notion of thinking about what is our role and responsibility to one another and to community.
Sure.
The curriculum for the school is place-based education. So it says that all of the learning for all of the disciplines from mathematics to science and ecology is connected to learning about the community and figuring out how can we contribute to the community. For example, students can walk around the community and do an asset map. It's something that they've been working towards. So you go around the community and you basically, as you learn about maps and cartography, you are learning about what are the different places and different types of institutions we have in our community. That later on sets up a discussion of what other things would you like to see?
What should we have?
What should we have, and how do we get those things? So it's not necessarily speaking about social justice and social activist rights issues from a standpoint of deficit, but from them really thinking creatively and critically around what is possible.
Right, right. And building that individual character at that young age, which you know, gives them that self confidence and identity that that makes you want to stand up for yourself and for others.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One of the principles of the Boggs School is that we are solutionaries. In fact, the T-shirts for the Boggs Center has that on the back of it. And so, for instance, a young child who sees inequality walking through the neighborhood, some homes are nice. There are actually homes in the neighborhood that are completely blighted.
Sure.
There are homes where people live that don't have water, that maybe don't have heat. Being involved in knowing that, those children bring that to the classroom. And they want to have discussions like, my cousin's water got cut off and they're living with us. Why is that?
Right.
Why can't people have water? Why isn't it a human right? And so this is, even though they're young, they are very astute.
Right?
They see, that, in fact, they may see inequality a lot faster than older folks. So I think that is part of the mission, but also we know that they won't be Jimmy Boggs or Lee Boggs. They'll be what their times, their community require of them to move it forward.
Right.
And the term is revolutionary humanism. And Grace's position, when you think of revolution, sometimes you think of destruction. But in the terms of revolutionary humanism or revolutionary love of community, the beloved community, all of these concepts are kind of seeped into the framework there at the Boggs School.
Right. In the film clip we watched, you saw Grace Boggs talking about the election of President Obama in 2009, and how you know, we always seem to be looking for some sort of I think the word she used was messiah, and that increasingly we really need to be the captains, the leaders of our own movement. That's got to be a very difficult thing to sort of come to terms with little kids, right?
You know what, I would have to say I'm not sure. You know, little kids' minds, I would think that it would be easier for little kids to come to terms with it. I think the notion that there can only be one may something that is taught to kids more so than something that they come up with on their own.
Sure.
And I think when you think about building community, and even when they look at the leaders of the school, you know, the founders of the school, the principal, the executive director, the community director, they are being brought up in a tradition that's all about there's not just one, but that we all have responsibility, we share it collectively. And when you see them interact with one another, you see them support one another. There's no diffusive responsibility. If there's one student that needs attention, there's several students that run over. Peter Putnam, Julia's husband, tells me the story of they were out doing some activities with the kids that were playing. One of the kids tripped and fell, and then all of a sudden there was just a rush of bodies over to this one child. He's like, are they running over? What are they doing? And then they all were helping this one child up. So they're being brought up in that tradition that Grace has bred in her work, that it's about all community members showing up together.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You said she's going to be 99.
99.
That's a remarkable run for anybody. What would you say would you say the school is the most important part of her legacy around town?
Grace and I have had discussions about this, and it's funny you should raise this, but just 2 weeks ago I said, Grace, the legacy of James and Grace Lee Boggs may very well be over on Mitchell Street.
Yeah.
Because the seeding that's happening there, the love that's being given and grown is going to manifest itself maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And no matter what they do, even if they go to another city. We have Grace Lee Boggs thinkers all over the world now. And so these children are really, not that it's a laboratory or anything like that, but it certainly is a place, a play space where children can learn to love other people and to care about their community.
Right. Well, that's a great thought to leave the interview on. Thank you guys for being here, and good luck at the school.
Thanks.
That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time on American Black Journal.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.